Welcome to Get In Podcast. I'm Debbie Rosas, and we are here to explore something that we all have, a brain. We're talking about the brain and the body on life. What does it mean? In the Get In Podcast, we explore everything about the body and life through conversation. As I say, nothing happens without a conversation. I'm a creator of the Nia technique. It's an international body and life movement art. Movement is the key. You look at any prescription for longevity, to live a healthy and well life, and you're going to see movement on the top of the list. Well, there is nothing more active in terms of movement than your brain on life. Many of you, maybe you're a little concerned as you age about your brain. Well, today's conversation, we're going to dive into a personal and also a scientific perspective. We're going to look through the lens of the body, through movement, and through lived experience. How can we support our brain health? How do we build resilience, mental brain resilience? And how can movement, all kinds of movement, any kind of movement, even a nice walk, help us stay healthy and well, and maybe even help our brain become more active and more functional? To explore this, I am joined by somebody very dear to me. She is a mentor, she's a colleague, she's a friend, and she has spent decades at the forefront of movement, people, and the brain. Caroline Kohles. Now, she does so many things. Talk about having an active brain. It blows my mind what she does with her brain and her body in one single day. She's Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC in, you got it, New York City, Manhattan. She spent over 20 years there shaping some of the most innovative and inclusive wellness programming. She is a true leader in the field of movement arts, health, and well-being. She loves nothing more than to design comprehensive health programs for all ages, all abilities, and she has a passion and a particular expertise in cancer care, nationally recognized as also being a huge innovator with the Parkinson's Movement Program. She oversees, as I said, people, programs. She's created more than 100 group fitness classes and wellness offerings, as I said, to diverse populations, seniors, teens, prenatal, postnatal communities. If you're getting an idea that this woman walks her talk and knows what she's doing, you're absolutely right. She is the creator of the Edmund J. Safford Parkinson's program, dear to her heart. She's developed, as I said, a beautiful initiative that she puts on once a year, a cancer care program, and it is beautiful. I've been lucky enough to be invited once. She also, when it comes to movement, is a certified 5 rhythms teacher. She's an extraordinary Nia educator, Nia trainer, and on the Nia choreography team. Her creative passion for integrating movement, mindfulness, and holistic health is not just what she does professionally, but it's also how she lives personally. She is a life coach, absolutely. But more than that, I've watched her coach herself and her family. Deeply, deeply collaborative with anybody that she works with. She's contributed to programs like The Doctor Is In, working along the Whole Being Institute. She is studied. She is certified. She's got credentials you wouldn't believe. She studied at the University of California, Santa Barbara, UCSB. And she has won many, many awards. I like to give her the award of the Woman of the Year in my life, who does so, so much. But she did receive recently the award of Staff Excellence. People love her. And beyond her professional work, like I said, is this personal passion. Like me, and like many Nia people, she believes that everyone at any stage of life can take steps forward to feeling better, moving better. She is a devoted friend and wife, a sister and daughter. Over 25 years relationship I've had with her. So there's a wealth of knowledge, fun times that we've shared. And one of the things that you may not know about her is her deep passion for the brain. I remember well, she's going to tell us a story when she went to study with Elaine de Beauport, teacher, researcher, educational innovator with Sofía Díaz, the author of The Three Faces of Mind, a book Caroline turned me onto that I love. You're going to want to pick it up. I'll say it again. The Three Faces of Mind. It's visionary in brain science. It influences how Caroline has shaped her understanding, and now mine too, of human potential, the mind, the brain, across not just our thinking mind, but also our body, emotional, and behavioral intelligence. So let's get into it. Caroline, what's it like when you hear in your brain all the stuff you've done? Do you sit back and go, who is that woman?
No, I think, oh, Debbie, you're taking too long. Let's forget all of that and let's just get to the juice. But which I think is kind of how I run my life, which is that what's next? And I'm one of my strengths is hope, and hope is really about looking for opportunity in the future. It's advocacy in what can we do next. Hope is the only positive emotion where fear is present. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, how we can have simultaneously a lot of different circuitry happening. So in our brain. And so that's when I hear all that, it makes me a little uncomfortable, to be honest, because I feel like, why are we talking so much about me? Let's talk about the brain. Let's talk about Nia. Let's talk about you and your influence and power in community to bring movement and this particular technique, the Nia technique, to fruition, which has such a direct impact on how we learn and also on our brain. I think right now in our world, there is what do I want to say? There is a race, there is a competition, there is something going on, whatever you would call it. Maybe you can come up with a better metaphor for the command of our attention, right? So it's really important, whether it's in the political spectrum, whether it's social media, whether it's religion, whether it's nature, there's a lot that is trying to control our brain. And what I'm dedicated to right now, especially, is using movement, using Nia to teach people how they can actually harness their own mind and their own brain and their own intelligence to make choices that are supportive of their unique self and also their contribution in the world. We only have one life. And I think how we use our energy and how we use what we're uniquely designed to do is important and significant. I think everyone matters. I think there's no one, science proves this, there's no one like you or anyone on this call in the universe. And so your gift and your ability to harness your own mind and your body and your emotions and your spirits and integrate them in a way that is meaningful to you and shapes the world in the way that only you can is crucial, especially right now.
Yeah. You're talking about the relationship that we each have to our body and our life, which you said is unique. It's only ours. I want you to go back and I want you to tell us the story of your relationship with Elaine, how you met, what you discovered, and how she pointed out to you personally something that awakened you to your brain. We can either be conscious or unconscious of our energy, Elaine said. We can call ourself and that surrounds us, right? An energy, right? But this relationship that you had with Elaine changed you dramatically. Tell us that story.
I think there are all these key moments. Sometimes it can be meeting a stranger on the street, even where we have an intersection in which we have almost an aha moment. And they've actually studied this in the brain, where what creates that aha moment. And there are certain things that we can do, believe it or not, that create that aha moment. One of them is getting lost in something that we really love doing. And that's exactly where they found me. They were on the treadmills, these two older ladies that were trying to get in shape in the Equinox gym in New York City. And I was in the studio and they watched me and they were like, what are they doing? Because it wasn't structured, right? It wasn't what I call hanger appeal, like a yoga class where everyone was doing the same thing at the same time, facing the same direction. In NIA, we are multi-sensorial, multi-dimensional. So people were moving in their own ways. And we had a free dance component, and then we had a constructed component. And so they were watching this and they were like, what is this girl doing? So they decided, even though they were not movement people at all, they said, we've got to go in there and try it. It looks, because people were laughing, were having fun. They also watched that people were interacting with one another. They were facing different directions. They were going up and down from the floor. And they said, wait a second, we've got to try it. And I remember the first day they came in, they had on clothing, right? Because they didn't even own workout clothing. And here were these two sweet older ladies. And I said, welcome, my name's Caroline, and any injuries and anything I should know. And have you taken NIA before? And they said, no. And then we proceeded. And of course, we went through the 13 joints. We moved, and I taught a class with our 7 cycles, and they were blown away. And she said to me, and we had tea later, she said, can we take you out for tea? And they wanted to get to know me a little bit and actually invite me to work with their advanced group of facilitators in Venezuela. That was their plan. I had no idea that was their plan. But the reason, what they said to me was, do you realize that what you're doing is illustrating how the brain dances? And I said,
you said no. And I remember you telling me that. And I said, tell me more. What are you talking about?
Right. And at that time, I didn't realize it. But as a body person, I was a professional dancer. I was most at home when I was moving. I don't know if this was like this for you, Debbie, but when I grew up as a kid, things communicating in a very sequential way wasn't always easy for me. But if you put me on the dance floor, everything made sense.
What year are we talking about? Bring us back to the year.
I think that was probably in 2000 and, well, it might have been right before 1999.
Yeah.
Yeah, right before that.
Yeah.
So, but this idea of being like out of water, a dancer out of water, right? So when I moved, everything made sense. And when I would try and speak sometimes or try and communicate all my ideas, they didn't always land. People didn't always understand. And I wasn't sure what was going on there. And what they helped me understand, and I always thought that the body, there was one voice in the mind, right? Okay. And I didn't realize that there were many voices in the body, in the brain, right? And they taught me that. And that was huge for me because I was trying to think of, if I just listen what are my feelings telling me? What are my mind telling me? What is my, body telling me? And I didn't realize they were three separate conversations. And they explained that to me, that biologically, we don't have one unified way of working in our system isn't designed that way. It's designed to keep us safe. So we need to be able to pay attention to our feelings and what we see and what we're doing and how we feel. So just biologically, survival wise, we are like an orchestra. And there's the strings, there is the bass, there's the flutes and the what do you call it, those instruments. And then there's the timpani, like there's different sections of the orchestra, and there are different sections of your brain. And they really were about how do you create a symphony in your own brain? And they explained that to me.
So, you bring up a perfect time to talk about what's the difference between the anatomy of our brain and those different parts that you're talking about, part of the orchestra, and our mind. What's the distinction between the mind and the brain to help the listeners recognize the difference between a physical organ and this thing called mind that expresses itself through our thoughts, emotions, awareness? We get to make choice. People say that it's the most challenging thing to harness is your mind energy. I'm sure my mind goes off and into stories all the time. It brings me down a rabbit hole, or all of a sudden makes me feel bad, or it can shift and make me feel good. We have the power to shift our thoughts, right? So what did you learn about the difference between that anatomy and then my mind?
Well, she asked me an important question. She said, "Do you believe everything you think?" And I said, "No, of course not." She goes, "Do you believe everything you feel?" And I said, "Of course." And she goes, "Why?" And that for me was huge. She says, "It's stimulation. It's information that you're being given, but it's not necessarily the only truth. And it's not necessarily complete." And so she said, "Your job is to stay in the center, right? And listen to the thoughts, listen to the feelings, listen to um, the movements, what's going on around you, and then listen to the past because you've experienced that, your past experience, and then make choices." So this idea that I wasn't going to, if I just could be still, I would arrive at one central place, right? That I just had to find that, and there was one central place, was replaced by the knowledge that there's in my biology, there is multiple conversations that are going on that I need to orchestrate and also learn how to surf.
Explain more. I love the fact that you mentioned that the brain doesn't have one language.
Yeah.
And how do we possibly surf with multiple languages?
Well, this is why I like Nia so much. Because I think, and maybe you can tell me what you think, Deb, the stimulation and sensation are the keys to helping us come fully present into our body and access the wisdom that we have. You kind of have two systems that are working on. You have sort of the threat and fear system, and then you have sort of the empathy and connection system. That's very simplified, but they work together. So we're choosing between those all of the time. And if we feel threatened, safety is paramount, right? You're going to pay more attention to the tiger than the butterfly, right? But the butterfly is important because it represents beauty and something delicate. So our negative emotions or our negative experience, it lays down thicker. It's almost like Velcro. And our positive experiences or pleasure or enhancements, right? That can be more delicate. And we almost have to actively seek it in order to balance out the body, in order to balance out and stay fully present. So we're not what I call hijacked by our own amygdala and fear-based system. Now, that's why I say there's a fight for the mind right now, because in the news, if it bleeds, it leads. They want to captivate and hijack your own brain. And Nia and the focus on sensation and coming back to the body each time, coming back to the body. What am I sensing? We teach everybody sense your, right? And then everybody gets to go into their body. They're directed to sense their body part. What is it? The shoulder, the breath, the fingers. And by doing that, we're directing attention. And the way neuroplasticity works, which is just simply a wonderful capacity that the brain has, it's agnostic. You can train the brain for habits that aren't so good for you and for things that are great for you. And I like to think of neuroplasticity as like, I know you love snow. Think of snow without any tracks on it. And then here you walk. And if you have a pathway, if you keep walking the same way, the snow gets packed down. And that becomes the preferred way to behave. That can even happen in an injury. Let's say I'm healing my knee right now, and I'm starting to walk. Like one leg is a little bit limpy than the other because I'm healing it. But if I'm not careful, that becomes the pattern that my body and my brain remember. And I start to walk that way. So in Nia, we start to pay attention. What am I doing with my feet? What do I sense in them? What's the right and the left side doing, right? Where is the balance? And we can take compensatory action that we compensate over time that just happens from living, and we can actively seek and change it in the moment. So stimulation and being aware is what the Nia technique does for me in my daily life. And I have to say, I practice this all the time, not just in the classroom, but when I'm walking. Today I was walking after Nia class. We were walking down the street to get to we like to have coffee afterwards. And a thought came into my brain, which was like, oh, you're going to have this podcast. And what if you don't, sound intelligent? And I was like, well, that's not helpful. Right? But we do this all the time, right? We do this all the time. And then I could go into my body. I said, wait a minute, let me come into my body. Where's that thought registering in my body? Do I feel it in my heart? Do I feel it in my hands? Can I go ahead and allow that, not fight it, allow that, but pay attention to where I feel it in my body? And then breathe with that and know that's just, information. It's just my desire to do well and to make my information accessible and to sound articulate and not disappoint you, and all of those things that come into play when we have something that we are up against. But how many thoughts do we have during the day? There's a bit of an argument about it, but thousands.
Yeah,
thousands.
You bring up a really interesting point, talking about the snow and packing it down. So here we have this anatomical brain that's designed to do things and function in a certain way. But I feed my brain. Right now, certainly my brain is picking up information from the world and environment that I live in. But I also get to feed my brain with thoughts. And if I only work a muscle in my body one way, right, it'll get overdeveloped and it'll create an imbalance. So it's sort of like, the same thing with our brain. To realize that if we feed it and keep feeding it the same thing, it's going to keep responding in the same way.
Yeah.
And yet, if we look at that one constant change and we realize in NEA, we talk about movement and energy variety. If we look at the anatomy of our brain and say, and remember that all of the parts that have a unique function, whether it's speech or music or movement, they need to be fed with now time energy, or my brain is going to keep me functioning in the past. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah. And I also think it has to do with efficiency, right? Because, the brain is always looking for ways that it can save energy. So, in other words, if it can get away with, reaching like this versus like this, it's going to do that. So we have to
Is
know
it
that
lazy? Is the brain
it's
lazy?
efficient. It's trying to save us in case you need that energy later, right? So we have to know that this like hunched over, coming back in, curling back in as we get older into this that's gravity that's working against us. And it's also efficiency. It's just easier. My father is 89 now, and he sits in a chair. And sometimes when he stands up, he walks like he's still sitting in the chair. It's a great example of neuroplasticity. The body has learned that, and it's just efficient for him to shuffle versus to push through, stand tall, and move with big steps. Can he do it? Absolutely. But his body and his brain has said, this is easier. Let's do this, right? So we have to know that that's like entrainment, right? It's like when I have my earrings on. When I first put them on, I notice them, but over time I forget about them. And that's because if I had to think about my earrings every single time, I wouldn't be available to think about the tiger or the butterfly, right?
This is one of the reasons that I believe in Nia to stay relevant and knowledgeable and modeling and living the body's way, following the body's design and function. That learning a new routine, a new body of work, we deliver them 3 times a year, right? And I look at it as new, novel, and fascinating information to not only grow your brain, but grow your knowledge and skill as a somatic movement artist. And I see it in teachers that want to stay with what they know, and they just change the music, thinking that that's enough when it's not enough because of that entrainment that you're talking about. And it can also feel so good to say, this is how I do it, right? But we can get stuck in how we do it, like you just said, because it feels efficient.
Well, also there's something else working there, which is that, when we talk about the two pathways, this sort of fear and threat, and also this desire to create meaning and to also have coherence and to feel like my way of viewing the world is reinforced in how I'm living. So there's a reassurance when somebody takes a movement pattern and is able to lean into it and create safety with that, and then just change something subtly, right? So I like to think of it on the spectrum, right? Like there's a continuum. The ideal might be in terms of neuroplasticity and challenging our brain and creating new patterns and stimulating the nervous system and the connections and all rewiring the brain might be to learn a new routine, right? And yet, depending on where you are in how safe you feel in your environment, how much else you have going on, we haven't talked about stress in the brain, but it's a big one. You might not be on the continuum where you're able to take off and bite off that much to chew. And one of the things that Elaine and I talked about, it was an interesting thing to eventually go to Venezuela with them and work with their team of advanced facilitators. And it was the most interesting classroom I had ever been in. First of all, everybody had a chair. Everybody had a cot. Everybody had pens and paper, as well as writing paper. So they were encouraged to sleep if they had too much. They actually are encouraged to sleep during the session because she said when the brain has, right? When the brain has had too much, it needs to rest. It needs to turn off because it's had too much information, right? So we do need that time to doodle. We do need that time to just listen to the music. In NEO, we talk about, and I do this when I'm teaching, if I personally have had a very stressful day, I will listen to the spaces in between the music versus the actual instruments. So as I'm teaching, if I need more stimulation and I want to really go for it, I will play with the instruments and the instrumentation in the music. And then if I need more rest, I will play with the space between the music. And that's a conscious choice for me to help self-regulate.
The self-regulation is so very important. And I love the reminder that the taking small bites to be able to digest what we've learned. We talk about it in sense of coherence. Do I understand what I'm being asked to do? Can I manage it? Right? Can I manage it? And does it have meaning in my life? And so learning a new routine is a big bite. Changing the focus, a small bite, but it does add that movement and energy variety, which can help the brain grow as well. You've worked with both healthy and challenged populations. How do you define thinking intelligence for those populations? Is it the same?
Well, it's interesting. We're doing a lot of work with memory and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and MS. And so Parkinson's, the movement system, dopamine is impacted. Alzheimer's, the memory system, the hippocampus, right? And MS, it's the communication system, the myelin sheath of the nerve. So how are these, but they're all impacted by stress. They're all impacted by inflammation, and they all respond well to movement. And part of that is because of Wendy Suzuki's work and her studies about the hippocampus and how much we can flood the neocortex and the hippocampus with oxygen.
Tell everybody what the hippocampus is. They may not have a clue what you're talking about.
Well, I think you can jump in there too. It's a part of our brain that is responsible for movement and a lot of other things. And one of the things that we want to make sure that we do is stimulate it. And because it's so crucial to our health. And what would you add? Have you had a chance to dissect it, Debbie?
It's the campus. It's where you go to make stuff happen.
Yeah.
And I think that when you look at a brain, you can't see. It's not like you can say that's the foot, that's the leg. Yeah. You can certainly see valleys and fissures, but you look at it, it's like it all looks the same. But yet there are parts, right? Yeah. What happens on top, what happens on the side, what happens in the back, what happens at the base. All of those parts influence the receiving and transmission of information, any new kind of information. And as you mentioned, whether it's memory or myelin sheath, right, or movement, it's the brain that is the anatomy of our brain that's struggling. And that our mind has to deal with that. And our body has to deal with that. And that's why, when I talk about your body and brain on life, what's happening in your life, right? And it is a big deal right now. There's so much research and there's also so much more awareness of certain diseases that probably have been there, but now we can name them more quickly.
Yeah, and you had asked earlier, what's the difference between the mind and the brain, right? So, I'm not an expert on that, and there are a lot of people that are exploring that question. But for me, the mind is our intelligence, right? That we're interacting with it, and the brain is the actual organ, right? And it is true that, for example, if you have a stroke, the right side controls the left side of the body, the left side controls the right, the back of the brain, the occipital, the eyes, the Broca's area, of course, our speech, different parts, the temporal lobe, the hearing. So we know that. But what's really remarkable is how much intersection there is, right? And so to me, the intersection, the relationship is the intelligence.
Yeah.
It's that is what I consider the mind and how we work with it. And what's fascinating is, and they do this with accidents. Let's say that you see an accident. Ideally, they say that you should talk to the first person you talk to is going to get the most accurate description of what happened. And then after that, every other person that you talk to, the brain almost adds things to it
That's like
or
that game
forgets things.
telephone, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So we have to know that, I don't know if you've experienced this with your sister, but sometimes I talk to my sisters and I was like, did we grow up in the same family?
Always.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember it that way at all. Right? And what is going on there? Is there one truth? Well, not really.
Yeah.
There's what happened, but my interpretation of that and how it's stored in my brain is unique. And that I think is really important, especially when we're talking about, let's say, for example, political situations where we have red and we have blue in America. And I'm always looking for purple. And what is purple? The integration of those two. Because like a bird, I need a right wing and I need a left to fly. So to me, what does the brain have to speak about that? And our left brain wants to separate, and our right brain wants to integrate, wants to see the whole picture. Now, of course, that's an oversimplification. They're working together all of the time. But like the left brain is like, what's my name? Where do I live? Let me put bananas on the shopping list. And my right brain is like, oh my gosh, I hear this music and I want to just do this. And then that reminds me of an antelope. And I think I'm going to, go down that road. And that reminds me of this time that I saw an antelope in Africa. You know what I'm saying? It's very different processing, right? That's happening. And that is important to know. And then you have the emotions, which are energy and motion. And emotion, what is it, like 90 seconds? I call it a sensation minute, or sensory minute. If we can just feel whatever we're feeling for 90 seconds, it will pass. But when we attach to it something, thought, this must be bad. This must mean I'm going to get in trouble. This is great. Oh my gosh, I just want either way. It perpetuates it. And we do that in free dance, right? All the time. We create that story and we can either power that or we can deaccelerate and bring it down. So just like heart rate, think about this, everybody. If you're running and then you stop, they can take, first of all, your heart rate when you're running, and then they also take when you recover, how quickly you recover after you stop. Same thing is true with your own brain. How much do you run your thoughts? And how much do they rev you up? And can you rev yourself down? People do it with walking in nature, meditation, cooking food, using your hands. One of the largest maps in the body is the hands. The brain maps is the hands. In fact, it's almost like this whole arm and reaching is and eating. For little kids, you see it all the time. Those of you that have kids or grandkids or just watch children, you see that almost everything goes to the mouth, right? So this hand and mouth coordination is crucial. The lips have the largest map in the brain. And why is that? It makes sense because we have to taste and we want to make sure that what we're tasting is not something poisonous, right? So that's very highly developed in the brain.
I love, um, as a child, I wondered, is my brain different from somebody else, or is it my mind that's different? Do I have all the same parts? And I remember asking my mother that because I would look and I'd go, well, we all kind of look like we have the same parts, but how come my brain doesn't work like Kathy's brain, whose brain works so fast and she's so smart and her memory's amazing and she remembers names and she can do math and I couldn't do any of that. So I was like growing up dyslexic and with what they called learning disabilities and a severe lisp, etc., having to have remedial reading. Thank you, because I'm really good at voiceover. Um, is it that the anatomy is different, or is it our unique, like, thumbprint of life force energy so that our mind energy, how we work with mind energy in our brain is unique to us like a personality? What do you think?
I think it's both. I think you've done enough dissection, right, to know that like some people have more tissue than others. Some people have, I mean, we think that people are, because of the illustrations that were given, everybody has 5 fingers. Some people are born with 6. Some people are born with an extra bone here and there. And so some people, their bronchus area is on the left and some is on, most of it. Most of us have it on the same side, but not all of us do. Some areas of the brain are bigger than others. Think about our DNA. I love the DNA spiral, right? Think about our DNA and our genes. We're so different. And there is a reason for that because we want the human species to survive. So it's not just location that's different. It's also like maybe if there's more of an emphasis on stranger danger, right? And being afraid in that tribe, and those people that develop that, then those that are like, oh, strangers, new opportunities, new food, they're going to bring us, we're going to survive that way. Both are true. So I think that it's not unusual. Your brain is different. My brain is different. It's one of the challenges that I have with some of the memory tests that they have for
Oh, I fail
have
all the time.
Alzheimer's and stuff like that. When they
All the
say, oh,
time.
can you add this up or can you add that? I was like, I couldn't do that when I was 10. Why should I be able to, why are you using it to measure me now? But so again, can I calm my system down? Right. And use everything as a piece of information that I can then synthesize and help. And, I work a lot with Parkinson's, with Alzheimer's, with cancer care, some people that have MS. And the big thing is, how can I not infantilize them? How can I see them as the energy that they are, right? And how can I even see myself? Sometimes I have a picture of myself as a little kid. That essence is still there. And I feel like with life, what happens is there's a layer of this, a layer of this, a layer of knowledge, really. When as we layer on more knowledge, sometimes what the brain does, because it's an efficiency machine, is go, I know that, and make a split judgment.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's work to do a new routine. You're fighting your brain in a way. It's work to say, let me look at this with a beginner's mind. It's work to say, wait a second, maybe I don't know. Maybe, and curiosity is huge. If you want to age well, there's a few things that you can do. One, really look at your sleep, right? 2, drink water. 3, remain curious. They have so much research about those that have a curious mind versus those that just are like dismiss it, right? 4, how about your friendships? Your relationships matter. And how many people, even talking to strangers in New York City, one of the things I love about living in New York is that I actually talk to people. I'll be next to somebody on the subway and I'll see they have a playbill and they just saw a show and I'll say, how was it? And I'm surprised at how often they will answer me and we'll have an exchange. And I'll never see that person again, but we had a moment. And those are important. So those that are single or don't have families, because there's a lot of people that are living out there who've lost a lot of friends or don't have a significant other. You can create that engagement with the pharmacist, the person that you see at Starbucks, and it's important. We know it from the brain. And then the other thing is the worry, the rumination, right? Especially, let's say, if you get a diagnosis, do not search on Google every single symptom, right? It makes you crazy. It creates more stress. And then what happens, the brain does not handle stress well. It goes into hyper alert, all systems are go, and it really needs, the reason it needs the sleep is it needs the rest to almost like empty and recharge like a computer. It's like you need to down, right? Take the top of the computer down, turn it off so it can reboot. And this constant going, which is what stress does for us. We haven't talked about the systemic and the parasympathetic system, nervous systems, but those two are at play. And oftentimes the systemic, which is the one that's the go, right, is kind of taking charge, right? Just as the left, which is who am I? What do I need? You're different than me. I'm going. And versus right, how are we all connected? What else? What's a creative way that we can come together? What's your feeling on this? Let me hear your perspective, right? That takes a little bit more. You can see it in my mind. It's like this versus, and then we have both of those. And when we're under stress and when we're afraid, we're going to be like this. We're going to be less like this. All of us, not just.
Yeah, and it's such a big energy right now. I'm talking about stress energy that everybody in the world is affected by, like you said, the news, etc. So our natural thinking intelligence is, as you said, hijacked in many ways. And what matters, as you said, to the brain, right? It needs stimulation. But when we're overstimulated with stress from horns honking in the street or the news, whatever it may be, that's a real challenge. That's a real challenge. You talk about stress, and I know personally the stress of social media, not only just from being personally attacked on social media, but just the abundance of information that comes at one. Now, I turn it off all the time. I say absolutely no phones, not taking phones to dinner, Is there a lot of research? Because we're seeing right now people are fighting back and saying, enough.
Yeah, I don't know that there's enough fighting back, quite honestly.
Okay.
I think that almost everyone should have some kind of plan to monitor their social media or their phone, not even social media so much. And what I mean by that is we're just really starting to understand how addictive it is and how much it hijacks, speaking of hijack, captivates our attention. And also what it does to the processing of the brain and of the system. First of all, the blue light that we have from computers and from our phones and devices is very strong. It's a pathway that becomes a preferred pathway for the eyes. So it will seek it out. So that's one of the reasons for little kids, especially very small, when kids are under 3, I'd be very careful with putting a device in front of them. They will start to prefer that to other toys. And it can be very tempting because it's a great babysitter. But in terms of how the brain learns, and we have the most neural connections and ability to learn when we're young. So you want to be stimulating them with all kinds of different experiences, sensation experiences. And we were talking earlier about how the brain is different for each person. So a lot of those, even developmental delays or differences, can be made up through different kinds of stimulation, right? And different kinds of therapies. But if there's a device in front of them, that's a little bit more challenging. You'll see that. I mean, when I grew up, we went outside and we played until it was too dark to see.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is not the reality. There are kids that are inside gaming, and I'm not against gaming, right? I'm not. It's just we have to know that that's different, and that's how they're relating. So they're not going outside and working together and creating a fort or playing on the playground. They're actually in their own houses, in the basements or where in the rooms, and they're communicating. Sometimes they'll text, or they will be in the game. And so
Yeah.
that's a different form of communication, but it's impacting how the brain learns. Remember neuroplasticity, and remember
Yeah.
the snow. So that becomes a preferred pathway. And the question is, do we want that? And then what happens as a result of that? Well, they're less tolerant of other people as they get older. They're less tolerant of, but wait a second, this is how I do it. And this is the way I've always done it, because the social media or the devices reinforce that. Does that make sense? It reinforces preference,
Well,
right?
adaptability is such a sign of health, right?
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually adaptable. And, I think it's unfortunate that somebody can't read cursive, for example, couldn't read a written letter sent to them. I remember years ago reading a book called Proust Was a Squid by Marianne Wolfe. And I read it, and she talked about the reading brain and how our brain changed when we started to read. And that's when I really understood how we change our brain through movement, or how we change our brain, right? By what we put into our brain. And like you just said, it gets packing down that snow. This is how I do it. And how can we create what the body loves? Volume and space. So that snow doesn't get packed, but
Right.
it's there, right? It's there.
I think, and I wonder what you think about this, Deb, but I think we need to fall in love with movement again and again and again and again. After an injury, if it doesn't feel so good to move, we could tend to be a little more sedentary. It's a great question to ask yourself. Hey, like when we were little, we would say, I'll get it. And you'll run to the door and answer the door. Or you'd say, oh, I'll get up and turn on the light, or I'll get up and do this. So the whole thing was about, I'll get down on the floor and, roll around with the dog. How much are we doing that? And we have to, right? So the neural pathway, the neuroplasticity has become, without even realizing it over time. Remember, the brain loves efficiency.
Yeah.
Over time, I'm not moving as much as I was. Whether it's because something hurts, whether it's because I've just gotten into that habit, and the brain goes, great, I have more energy saved, right? But
Yeah.
just like the hand, then this becomes the reach. If we want to keep this, then we have to do this, right? And we have to make it more interesting for people. And that's why I love Nia so much. It's like, let me change up the music. Let me change up the routine. But we also have to know that we're kind of fighting people, because sometimes they're like, but I liked the old routine, because the brain loves preference. I can get a caramel macchiato and from Starbucks and any Starbucks around the world. And in Nia, we're saying, wait a second, go to Hong Kong and take a Nia class, and it's going to be different than in Portland. It's going to be different than in Paris. It's going to be different than in Kansas, right? And we're supporting something that is healthy for the brain, but the brain doesn't exactly like to do that.
And it's a challenge as a product to say, you're going to find our product on the shelf and it's going to taste different, right? Because
Each time.
Each time, because we are all different. I'm going to end with what you talked about. We all have to fall in love with movement.
Yeah.
The neuroplasticity, we have the opportunity to change and to use this beautiful gift of a brain and a whole thinking body. The whole body thinks. Understanding the parts of the brain helps us understand the genius that we have access to at our fingertips, and to also tap into the anatomy to understand a little bit more, and then maybe begin to influence our behavior by using this genius that we have available to us. This is a really good time for us to develop affectional intelligence with our brain and with our body. We say it all the time, Ania, love your body, love your life. But to look at the genius and look at this gift that the brain provides and all of its different parts that give us access into smelling and tasting and moving and sensing and hearing. To have to sense truly in your heart an affection for this gift and this intelligence. I believe it can help regulate our nervous system, reduce stress, and certainly strengthen our emotional and relationship with our body and with our health. We can change our behavior, and loving your brain and body, it's a good way. It's a good way to begin. So I'm going to leave you with something that's personally guided me and has continued to shape how I live, move, and think. And part of it is really from Elaine's work. She had 10 favorite action to guide one's life. They're simple, they're powerful. I've used them in my own life. And you will find them in her book. Caroline, what was your favorite thing about her book? You'd say, "Wow, this book was so meaningful to me."
I
It's
think
called
the
The
work with
Three Faces of Mind, by the way,
yeah,
everybody. The Three
I
Faces.
think the work with emotions to get to, in other words, she said, and it's relevant for right now, especially, don't hate. It's too strong of an emotion.
Yeah.
It requires, it's so rough on the whole body
Yeah.
to hold hate. So she said, be careful of that, number one. And she said, you want to get, when you feel something, she made a little, like a megaphone, right? One.
Yeah.
Right? And she said, here you are with that emotion, and you want to get to, I can, you can, we all can, as a way to elevate that. And when you're feeling frustrated, even in little choices, it's like, I can't, you can't, we can't. And that can lead to violence, and it can lead to either on oneself or on another. But the other way can lead to possibility. So I think that's really, really crucial. And that was one of the things that I remembered so much about that, explaining emotions, that it's a symphony, that there are different weights to different emotion, and that hate was so heavy. And its impact, that it actually frays the cells, our emotions, right? And we want the cells to be healthy, like kind of like a cat, where the cell will do that. So we want to keep the integrity of the cell. We have to know, like, there's a lot going on that's impacting our whole body. And so as much as we can nourish our body to counteract the environment, we're thinking about that with Parkinson's now. How much of it is environmental? So whether it's cleaning our vegetables, whether it's our air, whether it's our water, making sure all that's purified. And it's also the toxicity, how do you say that? The toxic nature, I'll re-say that again, the toxic nature of stress, right? So I guess if I were to leave anything wanting everybody to know is, you have more impact on your own health than you probably realize. And move. Move, move, move. Fall in love with movement. It'll just flood your brain with so much. It's like a bubble bath for your brain, right?
I love it.
So move, 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 and drink your water, get some sleep, love somebody, give them a hug, and get that stress down and stop scrolling on the internet.
Got it. Got it. All right. Caroline, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they contact you?
I would contact me. The best way to do it is at the JCC. That's my first initial and my last name at Sofía Kohles at mmjccm.org. And if you're interested in knowing more about Parkinson's, cancer care, MS, whatever we're doing with, I'm working on an NIH study right now where we're really studying the impact of movement on the population, the Parkinson's population. We already know a lot about that. We're also studying the impact of art on the Parkinson's population. All those things that we did in kindergarten, we still need to continue to do.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. That's C. Kohles, Kohles, by the way, is how you spell their name. Thank you so much, Caroline. This has been so fun, first and foremost.
Yeah.
And really,
and we should
really
tell everybody,
inspiring.
Deb, we should tell everybody we're working on a brain workshop.
We are working on a brain workshop, and it's coming up soon.
Yeah.
So, it's open to absolutely anybody. And you can find out more by going to the NIA Technique. Find out more about me as well at nianow.com and on social media at the NIA Technique. And 2 weeks free if you want to experience your brain on movement and music and magic. 2 weeks free on NIA On Demand. That's our platform that gives you fantastic movement opportunities from longer experiences to shorter experiences. Movement artistry devoted to your brain, your body's fitness, health, and well-being. Self-care for your whole body and your whole life. Thanks so much for joining me. This has been Get In, a space to come home to your body, to your awareness, to great conversations to learn more about how to stay healthy and well. Tap into that intelligence that lives inside you. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, keep listening. As Caroline said, keep moving, trusting the wisdom of your body. Turn on listening. Turn off the phone. Thanks for being with us in this conversation. And remember, this is probably the most important time for us to all get in. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next time.